Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel. Also consider clicking the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. Also, if you are interested in a private reading, I do readings in astrology on a variety of topics ranging from relationship readings to career to transits for 2-3 years, or solar return charts or predictions for 1 year, etc. You are free to email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description, and I can send you a pricing list and reading options and any other details that you might require. Also, I want to mention that I have started membership options on this channel, and the short of it, just to give you the short perks that you will get if you choose to join the membership section, you will get 1 extra video per month for each membership stage or tier. So for the first tier, you will get 1 extra video per month. For the second tier, you will get 2 extra videos per month, so you will have access to level 1 and level 2 videos. And for level 3 or third tier, you will get 3 extra videos per month. The level 1 and level 3 videos are going to be on a variety of topics, so basically anything related to astrology, but it will be content that is not shown on my regular usual videos, right? So this is members only exclusive content, and it can range from, tips and tricks on how to read a horoscope to, I haven't done this yet, but I plan on doing maybe members only astrological synastry for famous couples, for instance, or the analysis of famous people's horoscopes, but then I can also get into divisional charts, etc., etc. So all kinds of things. The level 1 or second tier of membership options is especially related to synastry astrology topics, meaning relationship-oriented astrology. So this could be things like how to discover which kind of partner archetype is right for you according to your horoscope, or it could be, again, different characteristics, whether you're going to have a good marriage according to your horoscope or a less than stellar marriage. But you can find more concrete examples in the lists that you will find in the video description, because I have added the playlists where you can already see all the videos that I have posted in each members section. So yeah, you can see what videos you will have access to from the ones that I have already done. But I will continue to post, like I said, 1 extra video per month for each level of membership. And in addition to that, in the members only section, you will have access to members only polls, and you will also have priority when it comes to getting your comments replied to on my channel. And you will also have stickers that basically show up next to your username that show that you are a member, and a couple of exclusive emojis. All right, so that's pretty much all the perks that you can have as a member on my channel. If you're curious, you can check the video description for more details as well, or you can click the join button under any of my videos to also see the prices, because the prices will be shown in your local currency. All right, in addition to the members only section, I also have a tarot channel, and I post there semi-regularly, and I will be linking the tarot channel in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. It's called Martine's Tarot. So if you are curious about tarot, if you're into it, maybe check out my channel, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening to this intro. And now I'm going to get straight into today's topic. Hello and welcome to my channel. This is going to be, like I said, about what makes a good psychotherapist. So I'm going to get straight into it. So I have been gathering information silently about this topic for a long time because I kept analyzing horoscopes of famous people and also non-famous people that I know are into psychology, Freudian slip. It's funny, Freudian slip, get it? Anyway, basically, there are some common themes that I have noticed make a famous psychotherapist, psychoanalyst, however you want to call them. And there are multiple things to look at. Okay, so I'm going to give you first the general overview of what I have seen, and then I'm going to look at more specific examples. I have to admit, I have not analyzed the examples thoroughly. I just kind of briefly scanned their horoscopes and, looked for some common themes, and I saw the same patterns repeating. But I'm going to see more when I get to the actual horoscope, so I'm going to break down each example a little bit. But the common themes, there's one main thing that I have noticed that I want to get to right off the bat, which is the Arudha Lagna, as usual. And again, for those of you who don't know anything about the Arudha Lagna, I will try again to link all of the relevant connected videos in the video description, so you can go ahead and check that for more information. But just to give you the brief description, the Arudha Lagna is calculated based on the Lagna. So it's not the same as the Lagna, which, by the way, is the Vedic term for ascendant, right? So Arudha Lagna is a type of ascendant, which is calculated based on the Lord of the ascendant, and it is said to show the way that people see you in the world. So it has to do with the energies that people project on you, how you are viewed, and subsequently, it also impacts your life a lot. And those of you who have been on my channel for a long time, you know that I've done videos where I talked about how the Arudha Lagna actually can show the cause of death, the time of death, and all that. So it impacts the individual in a very real sense because we are dependent on the way that people respond to us, the way that people see us, and all of this. So I have done multiple videos about it before. Again, I will link all these other videos on Arudha Lagna if you want to get more in-depth information. But because it is so important when it comes to how other people perceive us, one thing that I have noticed time and again is that people who make it big in psychotherapy, they tend to have a lot of moon and or sun energy. Not only moon and or sun, but a lot of the times it comes through, especially on the Arudha Lagna, but it can also show in the natal chart, especially with respect to the ascendant, which I would say is the second highest factor in the horoscope after the Arudha Lagna that shows how people perceive us. Because the ascendant is like, let's say, the outer personality, the face that you put onto the world, it also rules the physical body and all that. So these two are really important, the Arudha Lagna and the Ascendant, because again, the difference, remember I mentioned what makes a great psychotherapist or what makes and when I say great, I'm not necessarily talking about the ones that are the most efficient. I'm talking about the ones that become very popular. All right. And this is really important. And the reason for this is because when you think about it, who are the people who are going to psychotherapists? There are people who have childhood wounds, right? And what is the moon and the sun? The mother and the father archetype. Now, again, if you've watched my channel for a long time, you know what I'm talking about because I've mentioned this repeatedly in other videos. I've also had a video where I talked about bad childhoods in astrology. I also mentioned, in multiple videos repeatedly how the sun is the main archetype of the father. It even shows the relationship to your own father in your horoscope. How the moon is the archetype of the mother, and it shows the relationship to your own mother in the horoscope. So people who are very moon and or sun dominant allow themselves to be projected upon with this energy of being paternalized or maternalized, basically. So if they're more moon dominant, they can be seen as more of a mother figure. If they're more sun dominant, they can be seen as more of a father figure. I found this particularly fascinating when I realized Jordan Peterson has significant sun energy, and he also has a bunch of other stuff that is typical for psychotherapists. And it's funny to me because he's called the, quote, internet's dad, end quote. So very telling. But aside from this, I would say a second close after the moon and the sun is Saturn, because Saturn is kind of a father figure again. And more importantly, it's neither necessarily a father figure or a mother figure, but it's more like the archetype of the wise old person, wise old woman / wise old man. So Saturnians generally come across as trustworthy, especially when the Saturn, is pretty healthy in the horoscope, because otherwise they can just be criminals like Andrew Tate. Again, I have done videos about about the dark side of the Saturn archetype. I've done a video about that, so again, we'll try to link it in the description if you want to see more about it. But the Saturn archetype can also come across very strongly in the charts of psychotherapists, because also Saturn has to do with the underprivileged classes. And when you think about it, again, I don't want to call patients or people who, go to psychotherapists as underprivileged, but when you think about it, in a way they are, because they are people who were, first of all, by default, had the bad luck to be born in, not healthy, less than stellar conditions, with respect to their family backgrounds, either in poverty or simply abusive families, who didn't care about them. They didn't get their needs met when they were kids. So to some extent, you can see this as, definitely psychotherapy can be seen as a kind of social work, because you're helping people who are struggling, and Saturn is about being of service, almost to the point of being self-sacrificing, helping the masses. That's another one. So yeah, plus on top of that, I think I've mentioned this in a video, but I don't remember which one, maybe one of those where I talked about the age of Aquarius, that nowadays you actually will see that the most prominent planets when it comes to fame, a lot of the times, the planets that show up prominently in people's horoscopes that become famous in their horoscopes are Saturn and Rahu. And this is because these are the planets that rule Aquarius, and we are in the age of Aquarius. So they seem like they are basically in tune with the times, basically. How should I put it? Is that the way to put it? In tune with the times? Basically, they're like, they're of the moment. They seem to embody the most common themes of the day, the most common mentalities of the day, the kind of energies that people tend to praise nowadays, consciously or subconsciously. And ironically, these two energies are very dichotomous, right? Because Rahu is kind of like the rebel without a cause. And this is where you see people who become very popular because they're extremely unusual and wild and unconventional and all this non-conforming. And then on the other hand, you have the Saturnians, like the Jordan Petersons of the world, who are very focused on tradition, getting back to, quote, traditional values and keeping order and structure and history and all that stuff, all the good stuff that Saturn likes, rules and regulations, basically. So you see these two dichotomous energies fighting with each other on a regular basis in the world among people. This Saturn and Rahu energies, which are, convention versus non-convention, or being wild and free versus, sticking to traditions and collectivism and all this stuff, which is Saturn energy. So Saturn is important. Another thing is seventh house oftentimes shows up prominently. So again, you have to differentiate between the qualities that make a popular psychotherapist versus what makes a good psychotherapist. I won't criticize it. This is not to throw shade or anything. I haven't, and again, I'm not attacking any of the examples that I'm going to be talking about, because I'm going to get more to their charts when I get to their charts. Like I said, didn't even study their charts in depth by now. Some of them I like more than others, doesn't really matter, but I chose them because they're popular, most importantly, not because they're good, because I don't know about how good they are, because I haven't studied them in depth and I haven't been their patient. But when it comes to being popular, these are the main energies. Strong moon, strong sun, strong Saturn, especially when it comes to, like I said, the Arudha Lagna, the Ascendant, but also the general horoscope, because those are the energies of these people. So the more they have moon and sun, the more people will tend to parentify them. People who have childhood traumas, just like I said, with Jordan Peterson being called the internet's dad, they will be labeled as a kind of substitute parent. People see them as a substitute parent and they seek their guidance and their support and all this stuff. Now, when it comes to people who have a calling for psychotherapy, right? Have a calling, they're very drawn to this, they tend to get very involved in it. You want to see things like I said, strong seventh house, because this is the house of the other. And it's the house of partnerships. And when you think about psychotherapists, they work in one-to-one situations, right? I mean, except for group therapy situations. So this would be fun to analyze. I don't know if there are psychotherapists out there who are doing group therapy. I would guess they probably have, like, let's say a stronger 11th house, rather than a 7th house. But for the most part, the 7th house has to be strong because they have to work in one-to-one situations. And equally important, if not even more important, is, of course, the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of psychotherapy. It's also the house of research. So it's very much connected to digging into the subconscious, digging into everything that is hidden. The 12th and the 4th houses also become important because, again, these also have to do with the subconscious. The 12th house especially has to do with the collective subconscious, which is basically a term that Carl Jung came up with, who was like one of the earliest psychotherapists, actually, after Freud. So these houses, the water houses, are important, but especially the 8th house because it's all about research. And equally so, Scorpio also becomes important. Libra also becomes important because, again, Libra is the sign of diplomacy. It's about working in partnerships, again, one-to-one situations. So Libras are very good in any kind of situation where they have to mirror someone else, you know. They have to be, and when you think about the good psychotherapists, what they are expected to do is they're kind of expected to basically allow themselves in a way to be projected upon. And then notice what the patient is projecting on them so that they can give feedback based on that a lot of the times, right? So in a way, you have to be capable of being very objective and have to be also very emotionally detached, you know, and be able to be analytical and to see things from both perspectives, not just your perspective, but also the patient's perspective. So it's very Libra in energy because Libra is all about, you know, doing this ping pong in a partnership. That's why it's the sign of partnership, basically. It's about relating to another person. And then you also have this, like I said, the Scorpio energy, which is all about digging deep. It's all about looking underneath the surface, doing research, understanding things, you know, turning something upside down and on every facet so that you can understand every potential perspective about a certain thing. So heavy Scorpio, heavy 8th house can often show up in the placements of people who are drawn to psychotherapy, especially the ones who end up working as psychotherapists. You would especially expect to see, let's say, a connection between the 8th house and the 10th when it comes to psychotherapists. But aside from that, what in my opinion makes a good psychotherapist, based on what I have seen, is if they have had a fucked up childhood themselves. Again, there is this guy that I watch and I will recommend his channel. I actually came across his channel, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and he had about 30,000, 40,000 followers on YouTube. Now he has like over 100,000, maybe close to 200. And it's great to see that his channel is growing because I think he is probably the best psychotherapist that I have come across. Again, not like I am the most educated in matters of psychotherapy, but just based on someone who has gone to therapy, has had traumas, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I think a large reason why he is so good at it is because he, as he has explained multiple times on his channel and even some books that he wrote, he also comes from a very abusive environment, right? Very dysfunctional family where he witnessed a lot of abuse. And also, some people are going to think this is potentially controversial, and I myself have had my doubts, as I have said in another video, but I also think Teal Swan would be in this category as well. I know that there are people who say, and I myself, I don't know what to say. I've actually done a video about her, so again, we'll try to link that in the description, where I talked about, I'm not sure to which extent she's telling the truth about being extrasensory or any of her more wild claims, but with respect to the things she says about human nature, advice about how to understand other people and relationships, she actually shows a lot of wisdom. And I've said this in a video that I think, in my mind, the reason why she has this wisdom is because at least part of the abuse that she claims she went through must have been true. Because people who go through this kind of abuse become naturally good at reading human psychology and become more self-aware than the average person. But won't get into that, right? So this is my personal view. So when it comes to seeing a good psychotherapist, you also want to see basically signs that the person themselves has gone through some difficult childhood issues, which you will see by judging the elements I have described in another video, again, which I have mentioned and I will be linking it, called Bad Childhoods, How to See Bad Childhoods. But basically seeing a damaged sun, moon, 4th house, 10th house, 9th house, these are some of the common ways that you can see all kinds of childhood issues. But of course, having childhood issues is not enough. So usually what you will see is, in my opinion, again, what I have seen a lot is planets in Shatabhisha Nakshatra, planets in Bharani Nakshatra, because Bharani tends to be, Bharani, by the way, also shows up a lot in the horoscopes of psychotherapists, and I'm pretty sure that Jordan Peterson has Sun in Bharani Nakshatra, and I think Gabor Mate also has some Bharani, but I'm not 100%. I'm going to see when I get to his chart. But in any case, I have seen a lot of psychotherapists that I have, whose charts I've analyzed, that they have strong Bharani Nakshatra and strong Shatabhisha Nakshatra. Shatabhisha, again, is the archetype of the wounded healer, right? So these are people who have been through a lot of pain, emotional pain, again, depending on what planet is sitting in Shatabhisha Nakshatra. But they can be people who learn through their own suffering, and it makes them very good healers. It's also called the Nakshatra of 1,000 Physicians to the Gods. I've also talked about Shatabhisha more in depth in another video. So again, if you're curious, you can search for that on my channel, or I will try to link it in the video description. But these are some of the main themes, all right? Main themes. I'm going to get straight into the examples right now. All right. Oh, and now, actually, before I get to it, because I just realized I just pulled out Jordan Peterson's horoscope, and I realized that his sun is actually in Mrigashira. It's not in Bharani. I don't know why I remembered Bharani. I think, let me just check. Mars. Yeah, he has Mars in Bharani. So I remembered something about Bharani showing up in his horoscope, but it wasn't the sun. But now that I noticed his sun being in Mrigashira, one thing that I want to mention is that this nakshatra also shows up a lot in the horoscopes of psychotherapists, because again, you may remember this from when I talked about Mrigashira in Nakshatras of Mars, or Mars is Nakshatras. I did a video a while ago. Again, you can search for that. I talked about how this nakshatra is very investigative, and they're very good at using their intuition. They really like to get to the bottom of things. They're very rational generally, and they like to just think. They like to think, they like to investigate, they like riddles. So they're very intellectually curious, and they are especially good at research and investigating. So you will often see that this nakshatra is also prominent in people who are into psychotherapy. So now, getting straight into Jordan Peterson's horoscope here, let's see what we have. First thing that I noticed right off the bat is that he had Ascendant in Krittika. Now, and not only that, not only that, but he has Ascendant in Krittika, 0 degrees Taurus, and he has Mercury and the Sun conjunct in the Ascendant. So very strong Sun energy without even looking at the rest of his horoscope. It's not a surprise to me that he's called the internet's dad sometimes, or that he appeals to, especially from what I heard, young men who don't have a father figure or, seek male guidance. So this is right off the bat, this is what I'm seeing, very, very strong Sun energy, because Krittika Nakshatra is ruled by the Sun, and it's a very masculine energy. Especially when it comes to men's horoscopes, a lot of the times they come across as, capable leaders and protectors and all that. So people naturally kind of gravitate towards them. And I say especially for men because, again, when it comes to women, society doesn't want to see strong women. And a lot of the times women with Krittika Nakshatras tend to get a lot more hatred than admiration. But let me not digress. Then you also have Mercury showing up strongly. Of course, Mercury is very intellectual. And then this conjunction of his is with the Sun in Mrigashira. like I said, which is very connected to investigating. So it's very fitting for a psychotherapist. And Mrigashira is also ruled by Mars, so there's more masculine energy if you want to look at it like that. But Mrigashira is a Deva Nakshatra. So a Deva meaning a angel Nakshatra. So it's one of the softer, among the Mars dominant nakshatras, it's, let's say, the softest in the sense that it's the less savage, but that doesn't mean that it's not capable of being very logical, very sharp, and very strategic. And then we also have Mercury falling in 20 degrees, falling in Rohini. This one is a little bit interesting to me because, again, so he also has the moon energy. So he has the moon energy because Rohini is ruled by the moon. And Rohini is also kind of known as the little princess of the zodiac, of the nakshatras at least. It's like the favorite wife of, I don't remember which deity, but this is coming from Hinduism. But in any case, Rohini has this energy of being very soft and maternal and artistic. But what is most important, I think, and relevant in his case is that Rohini loves to be admired. And then they also like to, they have a flair for things like beauty and fashion, which explains some of the weird suits that he's wearing sometimes. Can I just say this? But, let me not digress. Then he also has Venus in Cancer. Here we have more moon energy, 0 degrees Cancer, no less. Very strong Cancer energy. And it's in Punarvasu Nakshatra. Punarvasu is ruled by Jupiter. I didn't mention Punarvasu as being particularly connected to psychotherapy, but generally any kind of Jupiter energy would show people who would thrive in academics and, any kind of field that requires a lot of study, a lot of reading. So yeah, Jupiter would help for someone who has a career in psychotherapy, especially since in his case, he has Jupiter in the 10th house as well. And if I'm not mistaken, let me check. I think it's also falling in, Shatabhisha Nakshatra. So he also has a little bit of Shatabhisha. One thing that I will say about Jordan Peterson, it doesn't surprise me that he pissed off everybody. And eventually, I don't remember what happened because I watched like bits and pieces of reports about him. But I think they tried to take away his license, or they took away his license to practice psychotherapy in Canada because he pissed everybody off and, got all political. Basically, Jupiter in the 10th house is typical for someone who runs into trouble with their career, or sometimes even, they run into huge obstacles in career because they cannot separate their values from their work. So Jupiter in the 10th, especially since in his case, it's sitting there alone. There's no other planet opposite from it, let's say, to give it a full aspect. And so there's very strong influence of that Jupiter in the 10th house. It shows that he would also succeed in academia, right? Ironically, this is the chart of someone who would do well as a university professor, which he was. But at the same time, it causes problems because he cannot separate his belief system from his work. So this is something that comes up strongly. But let me see the Arudha Lagna situation. So Ascendant is in Taurus. Venus is falling in the 3rd house. So 1, 2, 3 placements. Then you calculate 3 placements from Venus. 1, 2, 3. His Arudha Lagna falls in Virgo, which has, bingo, the moon in it. I did not even check this before I started reading his chart. I'm not kidding. But like I said, I have been thinking about this topic for a long time, and I do remember I kept looking over like horoscopes of famous people. So I think I did see his chart at some point, and I realized that he has Arudha Lagna in Virgo, and he also has, so he is the epitome of everything that I have said in this video, the main themes, which is heavy moon, heavy sun energy, especially around the Arudha Lagna and the ascendants. Right. So basically, he's like the internet's mother and father, basically. All of the people who are, wounded from childhood and lack solid parental figures would definitely be drawn to someone with this horoscope, especially with moon in the Arudha Lagna. Also, I feel like the moon in the Arudha Lagna could be why he's actually, I don't know if you've noticed this, but he seems to be perceived positively when he shows emotion, which I think is not true for a lot of, like, if men would have seen like Joe Rogan crying on camera, I don't know if they would have been as positive about about how they saw him, but when it comes to Jordan Peterson, when he started to tear up talking about, people that he helped or something like that, or when he talks about his beliefs or whatever, everyone's like, oh, he's such a good guy, look at him, he gets all emotional. And again, I'm not criticizing or not criticizing, I'm just trying to look at it. It's very interesting how people's projections on him, manifest, and I think really help him in his career when you think about it, because let me put it to you like this. I can guarantee you 100% if he had Mars instead of the moon in the Arudha Lagna, he would not be seen as so popular. And again, I know people who don't believe in astrology will never believe this, but then if you don't believe in astrology, then what are you doing on this channel, But let me tell you from experience, the Arudha Lagna will show how people perceive you. So if you have benefics, and in his case, he does not have any serious malefic energy around the Arudha Lagna. Let me check once again. So we have Rahu's falling in Cancer. It's not aspecting the Arudha Lagna. Saturn is falling in Capricorn. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's not aspecting the Arudha Lagna. Jupiter, not aspecting the Arudha, which doesn't help or decrease from it. The Sun doesn't. So none of the malefics. Mars is not aspecting the Arudha Lagna either. So his main energy around his Arudha Lagna is Moon and Mercury coming from Virgo. So he has Virgo with Moon in that. So these are predominantly benefic energies. What I have said right in one of the first videos that I did, the general videos on the Arudha Lagna, I said this: when you have benefics in the Arudha Lagna, predominantly benefic energies, people tend to view you in a positive light. They tend to see you as, they tend to give you the benefit of the doubt. Let me put it like this. They tend to see you as a good person. Even if you're not. And I've also talked about how this plays out in the horoscopes of politicians, but again, won't digress into this. Ironically, Jordan Peterson also at some point said that he was interested in politics, and it's not excluded that at some point he might actually, endeavor into that field. Although I don't think he would need to, because he already has so much popularity. Anyway, Mars in Bharani is also very relevant, I think, in his case, because he's extremely moralistic. He has these I don't know if you've watched some of his interviews. I really tried to sit through one interview, but my, from the beginning to the end, but my ADHD has prevented me from sitting through it. But I have seen bits and pieces of his interviews, and he constantly references the Bible, and especially in the more recent interviews that I've seen, he talks about, Bible verses and stories from the Bible. Just recently, I started watching this interview with him with someone I think the husband of Lisa Milieu, but I don't remember what his name is. He's really popular on YouTube, has this huge channel. Started watching his interview where he kept referencing the Whore of Babylon. He actually said, oh yeah, this guy, the interviewer, said, what do you think about these women making tons of money on OnlyFans? And that he mentioned some woman who was selling her bathwater and made $1 million or over $1 million by selling her bathwater on the internet. And Jordan Peterson started laughing, and he said that's priceless because the Whore of Babylon in the story has a glass of liquid or something. But, it seemed to me like he was just trying to make connections, and, it doesn't really matter with the biblical stuff, but he has this, very well-defined sense of right and wrong, which, of course, is subjective, as it always is. But won't get into that. I feel like it's really fitting, and also, like I said, Bharani shows up strongly in horoscopes of people who get into psychotherapy. Bharani can also be very emotionally heavy, and a lot of the times can show abuse. And let me actually look at this. He has Mars in the 12th house in Bharani. I have some thoughts about this, but I'm going to shut up because I don't want to create, hatred or something. But with respect to, let's say, childhood abuse, I'm not necessarily seeing that here. So I'm not seeing trauma, which makes sense, because if you ask my personal opinion about Peterson is that I would say the reason he studied psychotherapy as more to understand people and to understand the world around him rather than to understand himself or to understand human nature because he felt threatened at some point. Maybe it was also because he felt threatened, because I think he mentioned in a video that he was really small and other kids would pick on him when he was growing up, so maybe it was also that. But he himself also said he had political dreams at some point. So I'm going to venture out to say that a large motivation for him is probably gaining approval and admiration, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Again, I'm psychoanalyzing the psychoanalyst here, but this is my personal opinion. Based on what I see in his horoscope and what I've seen about him, I could be wrong, but this is my opinion. All right, but this is pretty much what I see, and with respect to all the points that I mentioned previously, it's very fitting. You can also say that he's a very Saturnian individual because he also has Saturn opposite Venus. Saturn is in Capricorn. Surprise, surprise. I did mention people who have strong Saturn are generally traditionalist. They really, want to have order and hierarchy. This is my view about people who are Saturnian. It's like people who are Saturnian, they come into chaos and they want to create a structure. Whereas the Rahuvians are the opposite. They will come into a structured environment and break everything apart and reconstruct it. And yeah, Peterson to me is probably more of the kind of person who wants to create order out of chaos. And he has ironically, he also has Saturn and Rahu on the same axis, but he actually has Saturn conjunct Ketu, which is very important because this shows that throughout many incarnations, he has really perfected that Saturn energy, which is connected to structure, hard work, being down to earth. I remember also in an interview where he talked about his father and the men of his family, that they come from a rough environment, they were, miners or something, or they just lived in this rough area in Canada where it's really cold. And that they were really tough, down-to-earth men, and how he admired that kind of energy, which sounds very Saturnian. I mean, hello. Miners, by the way, are very Saturnian because anything that has to do with working hard, working the land, and exploiting natural resources, that's very Saturnian. Also, his Saturn is falling in Shravana, which is, by the way, again, Shravana also, I wouldn't say that it shows up often because, again, I don't remember it particularly often showing up in the charts of psychotherapists, but Shravana just intuitively would aid someone in a career in psychotherapy because it has to do with listening. So Shravana is also symbolized by the ear. And it tends to show people who are very attentive. They're very attentive to their environment. And when you think about it, of course, a huge part of being a psychotherapist is listening, knowing how to listen, knowing when to shut up, So I would say this is definitely aiding the whole situation. And it's also interesting to note here that in his horoscope, I feel like I'm digressing, but, since I got to his horoscope, why not? He has the Lord of the 10th house, Saturn, falling in the 9th house. So even more of an indicator of working in academia. Working in academia, university, teaching, publishing, everything 9th house. And also foreign lands, reaching maybe foreign lands through his teachings. Especially since Rahu is looking at Saturn as well, Rahu aspecting the Lord of, and also another thing is Rahu aspecting the Lord of the 10th house, again, could also potentially show controversy. Yeah, I mentioned this in other videos where I talked about fame and infamy and all that. So yeah, this is pretty much what I see with Jordan Peterson. Let's move on to the next example. Let's look at Carl Jung. So, Carl Jung, what do I see right off the bat? Bingo, Jupiter in the 10th house. I'm not kidding. I didn't even look at these horoscopes in depth until I just started. And it's like textbook. Everything is just falling into place exactly like I mentioned in the first part of the theory. So, Jupiter in the 10th house alone, aspected by the moon. So, here we have some moon energy already right off the bat. Moon is looking at Jupiter. This is a good energy because it shows benevolence. It's benevolence and also broad-mindedness, a mind that is open to study and intelligent and all that. Not very relevant because this could just show interest in a lot of fields. But Jupiter in Libra in the 10th house, this is strong indicator in the direction of academia, higher education, study. So it's already kind of pointing in the right direction. And also medical stuff, life sciences can also be shown by Jupiter. And he also worked, he worked as a psychotherapist, and I think he worked in a clinic, didn't he, at the beginning of his career in a hospital, mental hospital. But his Jupiter is also falling in Chitra. And the reason I say but is this also shows, first of all, Chitra can be drawn to fame. They can be drawn to fame. They like fame. They like to sparkle, shine bright like a diamond, in the words of Rihanna. Chitra is also sometimes symbolized by the diamond. So having this Chitra energy in the 10th house would also maybe explain why he became famous, just unrelated to psychotherapy. And also just shows that he likes the attention. He liked the attention. And also, like I said, Libra connected to studying relationships, human relationships. Ascendant is falling in Capricorn in, let's see, Uttara Ashadha. So Uttara Ashadha is interesting in the sense that it doesn't have a counterpart. And I mean a yoni counterpart. I've mentioned this in other videos. It's the only one of 27 nakshatras. I mean, you knew that one of them had to be left out. That does not have a male or female counterpart. It's only signified by the mongoose. I don't remember if it's the male or the female, but I think it's the male mongoose. So it doesn't have a counterpart, so it tends to show issues surrounding relationships lifelong, which oftentimes makes a lot of them also drawn to spirituality, maybe not necessarily psychotherapy, but they want to understand the world that they live in very well. And a lot of the times that comes from frustrations in their own lives about relationships and such, because there's always some level of lack of fulfillment when it comes to relationships. And he also has Sun in the 7th house, very strong aspect, especially since it gives a full aspect on the Ascendant. So here we have again the Sun archetype, which is the father archetype, showing up very strongly. And what I mean by full aspect is the fact that there is no other planet sitting in the Ascendant. Sun is alone in the 7th house, so it's fully aspecting the 7th house, showing all of its glory and light, shining its light on the 1st house, and creating a lot of masculine energy surrounding especially his outer personality, the way that he carried himself, and also his physical appearance. Shown through the broad face and broad jawline especially. I've seen this a lot when the Sun is prominent, that it gives these typically masculine features of, having a broad jawline especially. And let's look at the Arudha Lagna situation. So the Arudha Lagna, his Ascendant Capricorn, Saturn is in the 2nd house. The Arudha Lagna is Pisces with Rahu in it. Okay, so he has a malefic in there, controversy, Rahu in the Arudha Lagna. And let's see what else is going on here. So his Arudha Lagna, there is a little bit of moon by proxy energy here on the Arudha Lagna, because the lord of his Arudha Lagna is Jupiter, and Jupiter is fully aspected by the moon. Actually, it's in a mutual aspect with the moon, because they're opposite one another. So you do have the energy of the moon also kind of by proxy touching the Arudha Lagna as well, creating more of a, again, motherly energy, fatherly energy, also with the Sun looking at his Ascendant. And aside from that, let's see. Aside from that, there is no other strong aspect on his Ascendant, but already there are some key points that I have seen that are very strong, based on what I have mentioned in the introductory part of this video, that definitely fall hand in hand with what would make a prominent psychotherapist or someone who is really respected in psychotherapy. He also has Sun in the 7th house ruling the 8th house, so the lord of the 8th house is falling into the 7th looking at the ascendant. So the 8th house is also very prominent, you know, by association. And then if you, let me check another thing. Venus is falling in 27 degrees Gemini, 25 degrees Gemini, which, let me check again. I'm pretty sure that that's Punarvasu. Yes, Punarvasu. So we have a lot of Jupiter energy definitely surrounding the 10th house, because again, Lord of Punarvasu is also Jupiter. It's also sitting in the 10th house. So I would say very, very strong indicators that this person was going to make it in academia, anything that requires superior education, basically. Publishing, again, teaching, all of those stuff, all of those things. And also conjunct Mercury, which is also in Punarvasu, teaching becoming very strong, and publishing, and getting in depth, you know, because Punarvasu is ruled by Jupiter, like I said, so requiring higher education, being into academia, like I said, publishing, and maybe also that curiosity towards mysticism. And what you also see is, let me check. Yeah, his boon is in Bharani as well. So here we have the Bharani going on, 23 degrees Aries. So Jung actually broke away from Freud because they were Freudians. They were Freudians. They were friends. They were friends, but I mean, good colleagues. At least they were good. They were friendly, even. They kind of broke away because Jung became a little bit too mystical, let's say, for Freud's taste. I'm going to get to Freud next to see the comparison. And also what you see in his horoscope, Mars in Scorpio. Mars in 29 degrees Scorpio, which I think is particularly relevant because the last degrees of a sign, the last 2.5 degrees of a sign are the revolutionary degrees. So oftentimes people who have planets in these degrees, especially if somehow these planets, like in his case, now that I look at it, aspect the Lord of his 10th house, because Mars is in the 11th, also 11th house of gains from career, but it's also aspecting the Venus-Mercury conjunction by 8th aspect. These people are meant to be revolutionaries somehow. So they're meant to come up with ideas or ways of doing things that, you know, will question the status quo. So that's very fitting in his horoscope. And 29 Scorpio, let me check, is, Jyeshta. So Jyeshta is the energy of the self-made man, basically. Someone who makes it through their own efforts, which is, well, again, really true in his case, and also someone who really makes it big when it comes to profession. All right, this is pretty much what I see. Also, one more thing, his sun, 11 Cancer, is falling in Pushya. Pushya is also an energy that I have seen, okay, maybe not super often, but I have seen it in the charts of social workers, social workers, psychotherapists. They could often have Pushya because it's a very nurturing, humanitarian sort of energy. So they like to be, caring and we're helping others. And of course, let's not also forget, of course, it's falling in Cancer. So he has a lot of moon and sun energy, like I said. So it's really falling into what I said previously. Basically about being the mamas and the papas here. People projecting their unfulfilled but parental relationships onto these people. This is why they become very popular, in my humble opinion. And let's see. I said that I was going to do Freud next. So, let's see. So, Ascendant in Libra. Already, Libra showing up right off the bat really strong. And he has Sun in Aries. Let's see. I'm pretty sure that this is, yes, Bharani again. So here we have the Bharani once more. He also has Venus in Aries in Ashwini and conjunct Rahu in Ashwini. So I actually heard stories about Freud. I haven't studied him in depth, but obviously he was obsessed with sexuality, and there were a lot of people making all kinds of speculations about him. I don't know, maybe obsessed is a strong word, but he was definitely, talking about these taboo subjects, a lot of them linked to sexuality, and he had this theory that even children were sexual from a young age, and all kinds of weird stuff that, to a large extent, was disputed. A lot of the stuff that he said and did is no longer, even be seen as valid, but no matter how you look at it, the truth is he was actually called the father of psychotherapy. He was like probably the main prominent psychotherapist that put it on the map and came up with all kinds of first of all, did all kinds of research and then came up with all kinds of, revolutionary ideas at the time. And he was definitely very passionate, borderline obsessive when it came to his work, which is explained by Rahu being thrown here in this mix. So Rahu conjunct Venus conjunct the Sun. But also, speaking about philandering, that's what I was going to say, because Venus conjunct Rahu tends to show up in the horoscopes of womanizers, especially when it is in the 7th house, which is actually connected to sexuality as well. Ha! Ha! Again, very, very fitting because, it just hit me now. It is the house of sexuality. And actually, according to Vedic astrology, the 7th house, even more so than the 8th house, is connected to sexuality. Actually, literal sexuality. Whereas the 8th house is more about psychology. It's more about, let's say, if you can say both of them are connected to sexuality, but the 8th house is more about the underlying motivations or the psychology of sexuality, if you will, whereas the 7th is more about literally the act itself. So if you were to look at someone who's interested in Kama Sutra, for instance, you would look at someone who has a prominent 7th house more than a prominent 8th house. But anyway, I digress. But I think, again, it's really relevant in his case because he really focused on sexuality and how it shaped the personality and all that. Aside from that, his 10th house is falling in Cancer. There are no planets in Cancer, and the moon is in the 8th house. Bum bum. It's very, very fitting. It's all falling into place. Like I said, astrology is not messing around. It's always on point. And, so the Lord of his 10th house is falling in the 8th house, conjunct the Lord of the 8th house itself. No, sorry. It's conjunct the Lord of the 9th house and the Lord of the 12th house. Interesting. Yeah. 9th house and 12th house. Okay, so studying of the subconscious, studying of academia, 9th house again, publishing, academia. So just like in Jung's case, you see an activation of about the same houses. We have the 9th house, which is higher education, academia, publishing, and all that. And we also have the 12th house, which is the subconscious. Actually, let me check again. Didn't I? Let's see. Yeah, in Jung's case also, I was thinking, this is weird. So the 12th house shows up strongly in Freud's horoscope, but it doesn't show in Carl Jung's horoscope, who literally coined the term of the collective subconscious, but it does. I just missed it. Jupiter is ruling his 12th house and falling in the 10th house. So 12th house Lord falling in the 10th house. That's typical for someone who talks about the subconscious. So this is in Jung's horoscope. And now you see the same houses here. Like I said, 12th house is also coming up very strongly, influencing the 10th house, the study of the subconscious. But the 12th house is also the house of secret affairs, which I think in Jung's case is particularly relevant because he had an affair with one of his patients, or maybe more than one. So that would really explain, 12th house Lord falling in the 10th house, secret affairs involving coworkers or people from work. But again, digressing. Here again, also Mars is falling in Virgo in Freud's horoscope in the 10th house. Yeah, there's a lot of indicators in his horoscope that he was philandering, like he was having secret affairs or something, because 12th house Mars tends to be very secretive. I think I've also mentioned this in Bruce Lee's horoscope. He had a lot of affairs, and he also had, I think he had Moon not moon, but I think he had Venus and Mars and or Mars in the 12th house. Yeah, so 12th house is the house that is the number one suspect when it comes to like secret affairs, but I digress. It's not relevant with respect to why he was a popular psychotherapist. The points that I see, like I said, strong Bharani. We have Sun in Bharani. We have, I think his moon is in Rohini. Let me check. Yeah, his moon is in Rohini, so here we have the moon energy again. Moon in Rohini, Sun in the 7th house. So 7th house is activated very strongly because he also has Sun, Venus, and Rahu. So this means that Ketu was falling in his 1st house in Freud's case, which would also, if you ask me, Ketu can also be maybe not a strong factor with respect to psychotherapy per se, but it would help someone to have a good understanding because it gives this kind of outsider's perspective on the world, you know. So this is a person who was used to spending long times in solitude, which was definitely true for him. He was very much obsessed with his work, and you need to have this kind of Ketuvian energy to kind of detach from the world and be able to look at it as an observer, you know. That's what's required for any kind of analysis, but especially in psychotherapy because you have to look at people from a detached perspective. His Mars is in Hasta. Not particularly relevant except for maybe the fact that he was writing a lot, which during his day literally meant that he was writing a lot, like using his hands. Hasta rules the hands, if you remember. I talked about it in the moon-ruled nakshatras. Again, this is another moon-ruled nakshatra. So he has Moon and Mars in moon-ruled nakshatras. He also has Venus and Rahu in Ashwini, which is ruled by Ketu, so that's more introverted energy. And he also has Jupiter in Uttara Bhadrapada in the 6th house. Uttara Bhadrapada is a nakshatra that is connected to, it's ruled by Saturn, by the way, and it's connected to things like understanding through meditation, contemplation, and again, it's kind of this energy of detachment and mysticism and, you know, everything that's kind of, not easily observed through the 5 senses, all that kind of stuff. So it would probably help with a career in psychotherapy, especially since Jupiter is aspecting his 10th house as well. So yeah, very common repeating themes here with his friend Jung and other psychotherapists in general. Okay, let's move on to the next, which is Gabor Mate. So Gabor Mate, again, is really popular nowadays. He has a lot of books published about trauma and about addictions and all kinds of stuff. And I'm pretty sure that if you search for him, you will find tons of interviews on YouTube and whatnot. But in any case, wait. Why did I move on without doing the Arudha Lagna? Sorry, back to Freud. Pardon my ADHD. So anyway, his Arudha Lagna is, let me see. So he has Ascendant in Libra, Venus in the 7th. This means that he falls in an exception. So the way you calculate it is by adding, so you add 7 to the Venus, you get back to the Ascendant, and now you add another 10 placements. So his Arudha Lagna is in Cancer. Wow. I'm not kidding, like, wow. I didn't even realize this. I don't know if I calculated his Arudha Lagna before, but I must have at some point. But yeah, very much falling into basically what I said. He was a mother figure to his patients, probably, because people really projected this, energy on him of being maybe not a mother figure, but some kind of a parental figure. And it's also interesting to note up until this point that all of these examples have basically almost like a balance between sun and moon energies, which I think is quite relevant, again, for really popular psychotherapists, because they kind of have to embody both archetypes, where people who have both mother issues and daddy issues can come to them and feel comfortable or feel like they're going to get useful advice or project their unresolved issues with regards to their own parents onto these psychotherapists. You know what I mean? I think it helps intuitively. And then also the fact that he has Jupiter aspecting the Arudha Lagna, Jupiter in Pisces. And it's really creating this positive aura around him. And then if you look at it, the 10th from the Arudha Lagna is Aries, and he has Sun and Venus and Rahu in it. So the Sun falling in there, again, would have given him credibility with respect to being rational, being worthy of being listened to, and also becoming very good at his job. I think trusted within his profession. All right, moving on to Gabor Mate, like I said. Oh my god, I'm not kidding. Like, I didn't even realize this before. I just did all of their horoscopes in sidereal, like literally 10 minutes before I started recording, and wow. Like, they all have Jupiter in the 10th house. So Gabor Mate also has Jupiter in the 10th house, and he also has Mars in there, okay? And I think, again, his Jupiter, yes, is falling in Shatabhisha Nakshatra, just like Jordan Peterson. Which again, and Gabor Mate here, it's really important to note this. He actually references his own sufferings a lot. And just like Peterson, by the way, you know. You don't see this the same with, like, I mean, you didn't see this with Carl Jung or with Sigmund Freud. I mean, you could also argue that it was because they were part of a different generation and different culture back then. Even if you were a psychotherapist and you talked about, you know, all kinds of deranged issues on a regular basis, you were still not allowed to wash your dirty laundry in public to a large extent. So I feel like, you know, if Sigmund Freud would have just come over and said, you know, the reason I got into psychotherapy was because my mother neglected me when I was young, I don't think anyone would have, you know, cared about that, or it might have even detracted from his reputation. But nowadays, I feel maybe it's a testimony to the times that we live in. There are people talk about their personal experiences and it makes them more relatable and, you know, relatable, or it makes people feel like they can empathize more, like they're going to be understood better by these people because they have had bad experiences themselves. So yes, Jupiter falling in Shatabhisha and looking at the 4th house. And again, here you see the symptoms of a bad childhood as well. I mean, you see more evidence of a bad childhood because Mars is in there. So Mars is in the 10th house, looking at the 4th house, an element of violence and instability in early childhood. He actually did mention having a troubled relationship with his mother, or I don't remember him mentioning his father, but I think maybe something had happened to his father. I know that he grew up, you know, during the Nazi occupation and stuff, and because he was Jewish, he suffered because of it. So I don't remember the full story, but he did mention having a troubled childhood, and it shows up right off the bat. And then on top of that, he also has Ascendant in Krittika, just like Jordan Peterson, I think. Let me just check again. Yes, Ascendant in Krittika in 8 degrees Taurus. So we have Sun energy on the Ascendant again. We also have Sun conjunct Rahu, widely conjunct Rahu in the 8th house. So the 8th house is prominently placed as well. Lord of the 10th house is falling in the 9th house, just as I have seen with, I think it was Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson or Carl Jung, I don't remember. See, my ADHD is all over the place. This is why I need notes and maps and everything. Anyway, but Lord of the 10th house here, Saturn, is falling in the 9th house. Second Lord of the 10th house, Rahu, is falling in the 8th house. So again, we see an activation of the same houses here. You know, the 8th, the 9th, connections to the 10th house. And the Lord of the 12th, again, Mars, is sitting in the 10th house. And Mars is also ruling the 7th. So we have the lords of the 7th and the 10th houses falling in the 7th and the 12th houses falling in the 10th house. So connection to the subconscious, working in partnership-based business, all this stuff is very much connected to the house of career, in other words. And we also have, so Saturn is falling in 5 degrees Capricorn, which, if I'm not mistaken, is Mula. But let me check. Nope, I was mistaken. Let me check. Uttara Ashadha. Okay. So Saturn is falling in Uttara Ashadha, connected to Mercury in Shravana. Here we have some Shravana again. Okay, so Shravana is showing up, but again, these are just 5 examples. So, but like I said, in just looking at the symbolism of this nakshatra, I would definitely argue that it would be useful in the career of a psychotherapist or anyone who has to work with people in one-to-one situations, because you have to be a very good listener. That's what Shravana is about. It's symbolized by the ear, like I've said. So he has his Saturn in Uttara Ashadha, ruled by the Sun, ruling the 10th house. It's conjunct Mercury in Shravana and Venus also in Shravana. So a lot of Shravana happening around. So he has to be a really good listener. And let's not also forget that, again, Shravana is ruled by the Moon and Uttara Ashadha is ruled by the Sun. So here we have, over and over again, the same energies of the Sun and the Moon showing up in his horoscope. And then, let's see, Rahu falling in the 8th house, conjunct the Sun again. So one of the lords of his career, right, which is Rahu, is conjunct the Sun in 23 degrees Sagittarius, which is Purva Ashadha. But Rahu is in 1 degree Sagittarius, which is Mula. So here we have some Mula energy. Mula is very useful for anyone who wants to get into research. And again, I have also maybe seen this in psychotherapists' horoscopes. I don't know. Again, I haven't conducted statistics to see how often they show up, but just based on the symbolisms of these nakshatras, I would argue that they probably show up pretty often, because again, Mula is a nakshatra connected to research. It's literally stemming from the word, the root in Sanskrit, and it's about getting to the bottom of things. And Mula is often connected to research, like I said, being ruled by Ketu, and it shows up also in all kinds of medical professions and geneticists, for instance. So any kind of profession that wants to get to the bottom of things, which I would definitely link psychotherapy to, because it's about understanding the hidden, well, what is underneath the surface of, let's say, a person's behavior and all that. And Moon in Cancer, 2 degrees Cancer, which I think maybe, yeah, it's Punarvasu. So Punarvasu seems to be showing up again in their horoscopes quite a lot, but won't draw conclusions because, but again, it's important to note that the Moon is in Cancer. So the Moon is, again, very strong in his horoscope, So a lot of mother and father archetypes showing up again. He also has, let's see, Mars in 26 degrees Aquarius. This is Purva Bhadrapada, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just check. Yes. So Mars in Purva Bhadrapada, again, unrelated, but this would definitely show why he has some childhood traumas, because his Mars is in Purva Bhadrapada in the 10th house. That's the house of the father. And then it's looking, and it's also conjunct Shatabhisha, which is, another sad nakshatra. These Aquarius nakshatras, they're all very challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But especially Purva Bhadrapada is about literally putting you through the fires of hell so that you purify your karmas and your, through suffering and all that. So it's in the 10th house, aspecting the 4th house. So it means that both his mother and father archetypes and his early childhood were heavily influenced by some traumatic, chaotic events, and probably was exposed to violence quite a lot because of this. Now the Arudha Lagna situation. So we have Ascendant in Taurus. Venus is ruling Taurus. It's falling in the 9th house. So let's see. 7, 8, 9. So his Arudha Lagna falls in Virgo. It's unaspected, so there's no planet in Virgo. Let me check it is aspected by Mars, actually. Mars is 8th aspect, so that's a minor aspect from Mars. And let's see, Saturn, 7, 8, 9. No, it's not aspected by Saturn. Yeah, there's no major aspect here. So in his case, except for the fact that the Lord of the Arudha Lagna again is, wow, it's again aspected by the moon. So we still have the connection of the moon. This is similar to, forgot which other horoscope had this. I think it was Carl Jung, but I'm not 100% sure. I just mentioned it in the previous analysis. But someone else had this exact aspect of having the Lord of the Arudha Lagna aspected by the moon through opposition. So we do have this influence of the moon on the Arudha Lagna indirectly, like I said, by proxy in the previous example. And the Lord of the Arudha Lagna is also conjunct Saturn and Venus. So the Saturn, I think, would also help a bit. The Venus would help just to create more charm and approachability. So that would help someone who wants to be good at anything, working with people, really. But again, the moon, I would say, is the main suspect here that, again, would allow him to be projected upon with people's parental fantasies. And last but not least, I'm moving on to Ramani Durvasula. Durvasula, or I don't know how to pronounce it, Durvasula. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but she's a popular psychotherapist that also has a large following on YouTube. And unfortunately, her time of birth is unknown. So before you get overexcited because you see the moon in the ascendant, unfortunately, we cannot check the ascendant or the houses in this case. So I'm just going to look a little bit at her planetary placements. And what I have noticed in her horoscope is a lot of Saturn energy. So she has moon in Uttara Bhadrapada, which is ruled by Saturn. She has Mercury, 25 degrees Scorpio. Let's see. This is Ashadha, which is ruled by Mercury. She has Venus in 19 Capricorn, which I'm pretty sure is Shravana. Let me check. Yes, it's Shravana. So she has Venus in Shravana, which again is a bit of moon energy. And also Mars. So she has Venus and Mars conjunct in Shravana Nakshatra, which is ruled by the moon again, and it is connected to being a good listener. And again, like I said, unfortunately, I don't have a time of birth, so we cannot rely on the house placements. But there is some moon energy going on, and the Venus-Mars conjunction is a very passionate one. If you notice, she also has Lilith conjunct this conjunction, which might have something to do with why she likes to get into the bottom of things and maybe deal with controversial topics as well. It also shows a great deal of independence. And she also has Mercury conjunct Ketu, which shows many lifetimes developing that Ketu energy, that Mercury energy of being analytical and, breaking down things, being logical. And she also has Rahu in Rohini Nakshatra, which again is more moon energy. And she has Jupiter in 1 degree Gemini. Let me check that. Mrigashira. Okay, so she has Jupiter in Mrigashira as well. So I've mentioned Mrigashira being connected to, being good at investigating. And she also has Jupiter opposite the Sun. Sun, 15 degrees Sagittarius, which is Purva Ashadha. And let's see, Saturn is falling in Shatabhisha, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so her Saturn is falling into Shatabhisha Nakshatra, which may be connected to some personal experiences, maybe not. But Saturn, and I've mentioned this in a video where I talked about Saturn as one's life's work, that it tends to show the things that we spend our entire lives working on and understanding. So I don't think it's a coincidence that in her horoscope it's connected to, it shows up in her horoscope as she's into psychotherapy, because again, Shatabhisha is connected to healing. It's kind of the wounded healer, and it's particularly connected to medical sciences of any kind. So we see predominantly a lot of Saturn, but there's also some of the usual suspects. There is moon energy definitely prominently showing through the Nakshatras. What I would note here, but again, it's difficult to draw a conclusion because I don't have a date of birth, so I cannot know the full extent of how strong her sun is showing up. But just based on the nakshatras, there's not a lot of sun energy showing up here, which I would think is a testimony to the way that women are treated in society and what is expected out of women in society, even when they are professionals. I think that a woman with a very dominant sun or Mars energy would not generally be well received, even as a psychotherapist, or maybe especially as a psychotherapist, because she would probably come across too strongly. She would project a lot of masculine, rational energy, and that's not what most people want to deal with when they are going to a female psychotherapist. They want to project that mother figure onto her. Again, I could be mistaken, but just intuitively, I feel like it has something to do with it. Also, the fact that she's predominantly Saturnian. Saturnians are very good at gray rocking. So this is like it's their natural defense, basically, against predators. They're very good at gray rocking, and women, especially with Saturn, they tend to come across as pretty harmless in general because again, they're very good at gray rocking. So they're very good at hiding in plain sight and making themselves small and non-threatening. Whereas if a woman would come across, having a lot of strong sun, a lot of strong Mars energy, like I said, I don't think it would come across very nicely. It would not help her to be a very popular psychotherapist. I don't think so. But again, I cannot draw a definitive conclusion because I don't have a time of birth, and I have tried to look for other famous, popular psychotherapists that are female, but I couldn't think of any. I know that there's this other woman, Marissa Peer, but I don't think she's that popular, to be honest, even though she has worked with celebrities and whatnot. She does not come across as the kind of person that loads of people want to, I don't know, maybe it's just my impression, maybe it's just me that doesn't like her, but she comes across as more, let's say, commercial, not as much of a very popular psychotherapist, just because people like her. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, if you want me to do something separate about Marissa Peer, but I don't know if her time of birth is known anyway, so a time of birth would be very relevant in analyzing these things. But yeah, this is pretty much what I have seen. These are the examples that I have come up with so far. Maybe at some point I will do an update on this topic. And again, unfortunately, because I don't have Dr. Ramani's time of birth, I can't do the Arudha Lagna either. So this is just, kind of a breezy analysis based on nakshatras and signs. I also should have mentioned, Mercury is falling in Scorpio, so there's that Scorpio energy, but then, of course, there's also heavy Capricorn. Like I said, Saturn, because there are placements in Capricorn and placements in nakshatras of Saturn, sorry. I've been talking for too long. And there's also some moon energy, like I said, because of the nakshatras. But this is pretty much what I can say. So yeah. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, click on the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. Also, please share any feedback, comments, or anything you want to share in the comment section. And also, maybe ideas you have for future topics that you would like me to cover. Always welcome. I do take them into account. And if you want to find out more about the membership sections on my channel, check out the introductory part to this video. I have done a kind of run through of what are the perks for each level and what you will get and all that. And then if you're curious about getting a private consultation, you can email me at the email address in the video description. I will send you a pricing list and a list of reading options and other details that you might be interested in. And last but not least, I also have a tarot channel. So if you're interested in tarot, I will leave it in the video description as well. Go ahead and check it out. Maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.